Folks, I was making a video about whether or not Blink-182 was violating the Geneva Convention with this album cover, and it got way too complicated to make into a video. But while I was doing my research, I had this crazy realization about an entirely different thing. Back when protests were happening, seemingly every other day in Seattle, there were a lot of people claiming the use of tear gas against protesters was a war crime, which is incorrect. I actually started a script on that, which I never finished, but if you want me to make that video, let me know in the comments. Anyway, while rereading the Geneva Convention for the Blink-182 video, I remembered something else that people had been claiming around that time, which is police couldn't use force against protesters marked with the Geneva Cross because targeting neutral medics is a war crime. To be fair, in my experience, the medics at violent protests were excellent in their neutrality and did not hesitate to help me after I was attacked and OC sprayed by protesters at a protest for having a camera. I'm dead serious. They were mad that I had a camera and was unwilling to leave a sidewalk they were marching past, which is a weird way of saying, we want to claim the protection of the First Amendment for activities not protected by the First Amendment while stopping you from engaging in First Amendment activities that are protected. Would that be gatekeeping the First Amendment? Oh gosh, I don't know. Because it's the one I saw used most often, we will be using the Geneva Convention of 1949 for this video and not everything that came after it, which establishes fixed or mobile medical units may not be attacked, but that doesn't apply if the medical units are attacking the enemy in anything other than the defense of wounded personnel. Now, you might say, but of course they can attack because the tear gas and the rubber bullets are endangering the injured people, to which I suggest reviewing the section of the Geneva Convention that requires medical units to be a safe distance from the action. And if you do review that section, you may discover two things of interest. One, it specifies they must be a safe distance from specifically military targets. And two, the responsible authorities shall ensure that the distance is established. I believe this is specific to medical areas like tents, places that you would bring the wounded, etc. to treat them. Which brings us to our next points. First, the Geneva Convention is primarily about armed conflict. If the protesters want to claim the protection of the Geneva Convention, they'll have to acknowledge they're armed, which would raise all sorts of additional problems for them, such as invalidating their claims of First Amendment protections to protest, which could justify the use of greater force against them. Second, the involvement of responsible authorities indicates a requirement for some sort of organization or chain of command among the protesters. Since the violent protests in Seattle intentionally lacked structure or command, it may be difficult to establish. But don't just take my word for it. Let's see what the International Committee of the Red Cross has to say about it. For international law to consider the events non-international armed conflicts, which would trigger the protection of the Geneva Convention, quote, the armed groups involved must show a minimum degree of organization, and the armed confrontations must reach a minimum level of intensity. The fulfillment of these criteria is determined on a case-by-case basis by weighing up a number of factual indicators. End quote. Such as levels of violence, number of fighters, types of weapons used, casualties, and the existence of a chain of command. In fact, they also state, quote, a non-international armed conflict is to be distinguished from lesser forms of collective violence, such as civil unrest, riots, isolated acts of terrorism, or other sporadic acts of violence. So the Geneva protections don't apply, but we're not done with it yet. Speaking of the Red Cross, that's how these medical units mark themselves as untouchable. But there are two issues that we haven't addressed yet. First, the Geneva Convention establishes a specific manner in which medical personnel must be marked, which is a white armlet with a red cross, red lion, or red crescent, issued either by a military authority or by a neutral organization recognized by the government authorities of the conflict. Oh, there's that chain of command requirement again. It's so crazy how it keeps popping up. Regardless, here's where we're at. Either the medics are marking themselves with a symbol that does not establish their protection, or they're using the correct symbol without having it properly supplied and approved by the military or neutral organization that both parties of the conflict have agreed upon. And the Red Cross, the Geneva Convention, and the federal government of the United States does not like that at all. Let's start with the Red Cross, the only organization that is automatically recognized at the start of hostilities. Quote, before using the emblem as a protective device, the National Society must receive permission from the authority and with it lay down the rules governing its use. The National Society shall take the necessary measures to see that its members respect those rules and to avoid any confusion with the indicative use of the emblem. End quote. Next quote. Quote, the National Society may permit third parties to use the emblem in peacetime and in conformity with national legislation to mark aid stations used exclusively to give free treatment and ambulances. End quote. Do keep in mind, they have to give that permission. Next quote. Quote, when not on duty, members may only wear an emblem of very small dimensions, for example, in the form of a brooch or a badge. End quote. So if you didn't get permission, the Red Cross says no. If you're a member of the Red Cross and not working with the permission of the Red Cross, you can wear, at best, a badge or a brooch. Not this. That's a little too big, a little excessive. I've never seen a brooch or a badge that big. Probably never will, but good try. Almost. But let's move on and see what the Geneva Convention has to say. Quote, the emblem of the Red Cross on a white ground and the words Red Cross or Geneva Cross may not be employed either in time of peace or in time of war, except to indicate or to protect the medical units and establishments, the personnel and material protected by the present convention and other conventions dealing with similar matters. End quote. We've already established the convention does not apply to these protests or protect the protesters, so it's literally a violation of the Geneva Convention to wear it. Oh, how the tables have turned. We started with the claim that police were committing war crimes, established that not only is that not true, but it's the medics who appear to be violating the Geneva Convention. What? What? Oh my God. Say it isn't so. One last thing. We also have Federal Law 18 U.S.C. 706, which states, quote, whoever wears or displays the sign of the Red Cross or any insignia colored in imitation thereof for the fraudulent purpose of inducing the belief that he is a member of or an agent for the American National Red Cross, or whoever, whether a corporation, association, or person other than the American National Red Cross and its duly authorized employees and agents and the sanitary and hospital authorities of the armed forces of the United States, uses the emblem of a Greek Red Cross on a white ground or any sign or insignia made or colored in imitation thereof, or the words Red Cross or Geneva Cross, or any combination of these words, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 6 months, or both. Wow! A violation of the Geneva Convention and a misdemeanor. What? I'm not trying to bash the medics in any way, but folks, please actually read the Geneva Convention before trying to use it in an argument, because it turns out some of the people making the arguments are the ones who are actually violating it. Nuts. Absolutely nuts. But that's all I got for you today. Like, subscribe, comment, and until the next time, be good, stay safe.